We are hearing from various sources that the US and other sovereign nations are planning to give up some of their sovereignty at the upcoming World Health meeting that is coming up next week. And we're wondering, is this true? So let's look further at whether this is true and what we can do about it. I have a guest who's been analyzing this very closely and has a lot of intel on it. Before I jump into that, shout out to the sponsor of my coverage. The hottest temperatures of the year are around the corner. This means costlier power bills for you and me. This summer, your bill could be higher than usual because of the increased cost of materials and supplies across the board. This is why I highly recommend visiting easysummercool.com, this amazing 4-in-1 portable AC unit. On sale, actually. It's available, easy to use mini air conditioning. I keep mine on every day and it makes my room ice cold. It's got several settings. Anyone who wants to save on their power bill can have one in their room. Learn more by going to easysummercool.com. Save 50% free shipping on your order today for Father's Day. AC unit, okay? And it's a humidifier and air purifier. Pretty great. So click that link down in my description and check it out. And with that being said, I'm going to bring on James Roguski. Am I saying your name right?
You got it.
Awesome. You are an author, researcher, specifically researching international health right now. Tell me about this upcoming World Health Assembly and what you know so far.
Well, the new information is coming fast and furious because the assembly is going to begin this Sunday, the 22nd, and it goes to the 28th. This is an assembly of delegates from 194 nations around the world. That's what makes up the World Health Organization. And they will be doing many things throughout the week, but I believe that the schedule has finally popped up, at least the daily schedule. And it looks like on Tuesday, the 24th, they will be considering amendments to what is known as the International Health Regulations. Now, there's a lot of confusion, and hopefully I can, get rid of some of it, but it's very complicated. So that's part of the reason why people are confused, because there's a lot of moving parts. If you hear anybody talk about a pandemic treaty or just a treaty, that's a different thing altogether. You just have to compartmentalize it in your mind and ask people, are you very specifically talking about what is a 13-page document? There's 4 pages of cover letters, and there's 8 pages of really dense, legal language that are amending or seeking to amend another document that you can get your hands on, and it's the International Health Regulations, which are an 84-page document. The pandemic treaty is very nebulous. There's a lot of discussion and proposals, but you can't grab it in your hand and read it like you can the International Health Regulations and the amendments to them. And so as long as you're starting from that point, you're wrapping your head around these 2 documents, some amendments and the actual regulations.
Got it. Okay, so here we have the World Health Assembly on World Health Org's official website, who.int. You guys, it is a real upcoming assembly meeting of a multinational assembly meeting happening the 22nd through the 28th. I believe that's next Sunday through Saturday. So I finally got my hands on the actual documentation that you were referring to, and I've heard rumors that YouTube is actually censoring the link to these amendments that were presented by the United States to World Health Org in January of this year. I have posted the link to said amendments in the live chat section. Just scroll up and you guys can look at it along with me, but I'm not going to show it on the screen because I understand YouTube appears they may have an algorithm against people seeing these amendments, but it appears this is indeed a letter dated January 18th, written by let's see here. I'm looking through it right now. Assistant Secretary of Global Affairs of the United States Department of Health and Human Services, Loyce Pace, is the woman who wrote this letter representing the United States and presenting a slew of amendments to global agreements on how to handle global health issues.
And the document itself is very dense reading. And what I would encourage everyone to do is focus on what I think is the focal point, which is the changes to Article 12. Okay. Everything in these amendments is, should be a wake-up call. They talk about surveillance and many, many other things. But Article 12, Section 2, Line 6 is what got my eyes to pop open. It literally looks like a needle in a haystack because there's language that is being struck through, which means that it's being removed from the existing regulations. The existing regulations are actually, arguably parts of it I disagree with, but parts of it are actually better than some of the regulations we have in the United States in terms of defending your personal sovereignty, your rights, your bodily autonomy. In many cases, the CDC's rules are much worse. But what they're doing with trying to remove this one little line in Article 12, Section 2, is currently the regulations honor each nation's sovereignty, whether it's the United States or Japan or Norway or whatever it is. If there's an issue going on in any given country, that nation has the final say as to whether or not the WHO can claim that that nation has an emergency. The WHO can come in and negotiate with the country, but if the country says, get out of here, we're handling this, the WHO has to go away and they're not even allowed to say anything about it. What they want to change is they want to flip that. If you could ever imagine a reset, we're resetting the control over whether or not an emergency is declared from the individual country and handing that control over to not just the WHO, but literally to the Director General, the one person, Tedros Ghebreyesus, who's pretty much going to be coronated into his second term. Like all dictators, he's going to be given a second term unopposed during this session at some point. And he would be given the power, if these amendments were approved, to just declare an emergency pretty much at his whim. When you really read all of the details, there's no stopping the emergency declaration at any point. Now, they don't call it a pandemic. They call it a public health emergency of international concern, which interestingly enough is abbreviated in PHEIC, or fake. Okay. And so the thing to remember about the WHO, certainly as far as the United States is concerned, when we joined the WHO in 1948, the terms of the agreement were very, very clear. We're joining, we'll participate in the international community to, bring forth better health for the world. But you can't tell us to do anything, WHO. I mean, it is so clear that we don't have to do anything that they say. They make recommendations. But I often refer to them as the World Hypnosis Organization because they make recommendations, they make suggestions, and that kind of hypnotic, repetitive suggestions, people have just come to believe that they have to do whatever the WHO says. Now, in some countries, if a given country doesn't do what the WHO wants them to do, like injections and various things, they pull back on the money. And a lot of poor countries, are basically blackmailed into, taking the injections or whatever it may be. And so there's this very complex dynamic that, in my personal opinion, people just need to realize this is very much like being in a bad, abusive relationship where you wonder why people stay in relationships that are very, very bad for them. And that's where we are, and a lot of countries are with the WHO right now.
And you can see on the screen, I have the United Nations Foundation talking about Tedros's future. There's Tedros, the Director General of WHO, on the screen, and it says right there they're planning on strengthening WHO as the directing authority on global health. I want to read the line, the line that you said is the most concerning line out of the many amendments that the U.S. is proposing to have the nations vote on next week.
Mhm.
Again, you said that was Article 12, Section 2, Line 6, right?
And it's the part that's struck through. Correct.
Right. So it says here, if the Director General determines and the state party are in agreement regarding the determination that
And stop right there. Okay. It says if the Director General determines and the nation agrees. Okay.
state party, I guess,
The
means
nation,
nation.
right. And so and the state party agrees. Okay. If you take out and the state party agrees, what you're left with is the Director General decides.
And what
That's
they have here is they've struck through the state party part,
right.
leaving
And,
the Director General as the primary determiner.
and so the Director General has to negotiate and get the country to agree, yes, we have an emergency. And, arguably, right, countries could do things that are bad for the world to try to hide what's going on. And changes probably need to be made to the dynamic of, how do you investigate what's really going on and treat it fairly. But it's just absolutely insanity, in my opinion, to take the control from 194 nations and not give them to an independent body, right? But to give them to one person. That's what this is. This is taking the control of this emergency declaration process away from 194 nations where the will of the people and their elected officials make this decision, to give it to one guy, and let alone that guy. Okay, when you look into the history of it, you're like, that's the last person in the world that you would want to have control all of this. And so now there's a lot of things that people are bringing in that are not in the amendments. You got to realize the amendments themselves, it's a 13-page document. 4 of those pages are cover letters. And it's only like 9 pages of very dense changes. There are literally millions of words being talked about a pandemic treaty that's a proposal, and people are crossing the circuits and getting them all mixed up. There's a lot of horrible stuff in these amendments, but it isn't, everything that people are talking about. And I just encourage people to go look at how I've organized all the information. I've got it all on a Substack account, jamesroguski.substack.com. You can see the evidence laid out that's very specific to these amendments. And I have another article that'll take you a year and a half to read about the craziness of the pandemic treaty. Worry about that at some point in the future. Don't read that now. This is happening next week. And so we've had, probably by now, millions of people around the world are waking up. I just got notice from the UK that they had a petition that in the UK, if you get 100,000 signatures, they have to discuss it in Parliament. There's another group that wrote a notice to Boris Johnson. There's a group in Louisiana that put a resolution in. People are certainly speaking up. And the biggest question really is, why was this hidden? Why was this not talked about? Why are the delegates who are going to the WHO completely unknown? They're not published around the world. Nobody really knows who is supposedly representing them. When you see something that is in darkness and being hidden, okay, all we're doing is pointing to the documents that are readily available online, unless they're being censored. Why are you censoring what is essentially a legal document that is going to be discussed in a world body, and you can't publish that on YouTube, if I understand what you said is going on.
Right. So I linked the document again, the American letter to WHO proposing the amendments and then listing the specific amendments, including the one you said gives away our sovereignty. It's in the live chat. When I hang up this live discussion with you, and I have it in my comment section as well for you guys. That way, if YouTube censors that link, they'll just censor the link and not delete the entire video and my entire page. I'm trying to keep reaching people here. Okay, but this so the letter was written by this woman, Loyce Pace.
Well, I wouldn't say it was written by her. Okay,
her name's on it.
This was written by who knows. Okay, Loyce Pace signed the document and presented it. She was a delegate to the special session in November. She was a delegate to the executive session in January. I'm assuming, because they don't have details, that she will probably be a delegate in Geneva next week. We've sent her emails and they bounce back. She's on vacation, so maybe she's in Geneva. And so there's a lot of things. One of the things that people ask me is, well, what can we do? And so one of the websites that I have is stopthewho.com, stopthewho.com. Don't do a search for it. I was talking to somebody earlier today, and they're doing a search on Bing, and you don't search for a website when you know where to go. Just type in http://stopthewho and go straight there. But even the search engines are messing with people.
And that redirects to your Substack, right?
Because it redirects to a specific article on my Substack. I've already written,
perfect. So that's what I linked down below. I typed that out and it showed me your Substack, and I linked it down in my description so you guys can click that. And yeah, you've got a robust list of information to educate anyone and then empower them to do something. And one of them I see you have there is to write your congressman.
Yes, and the last time I checked, I think in the last, I'm guessing it's about 5 or 6 days, I think about 70,000 people have come through that page. And I got we talked about this earlier, I have to get it to you afterwards. Many people have been writing to their congressmen, calling, and some of the congressmen, legitimately, they're in the dark as well. And so a lot of times they're struggling to try to figure out, what are you talking about? There's all kinds of legislation. There's this pandemic treaty. And so, we're very crystal clear on what it is we're talking about. But a lot of people are confused because, there's so much information in the world these days. And so we've gotten feedback from some Congress people. I had a wonderful phone call today from a person who's a staff member from a state representative in Texas, and their constituent had asked, and they gave them my number to call for information. And so they're trying to serve their community, their constituents. So I tell everybody, don't get mad at your congressman just yet, because they may be just as much in the dark as you were a week ago or I was a couple of months ago. But after you tell them and you show them the information, they have an oath of office to, where they swore to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So give them a day or two to wrap their head around this. It's pretty complicated, but then at some point, they need to start speaking up. And here's a complicated aspect to this that is actually really simple, but because it's so different, people have a hard time with it. The way the WHO is structured, it's actually all voluntary, right? And we could leave at any time. We just have to decide that we want to go. And just like people have a hard time leaving a difficult relationship, it's the same thing here. It's like, we should just leave, but for whatever reason, people aren't doing it. With these amendments, even if they're approved next week, the rules of the road with the WHO is there will be a 6-month period where literally all that would have to happen is the Secretary of State of the United States or the President or whomever they might delegate would just have to write a letter to the WHO and say, no thanks, we reject these amendments, they don't apply to us, we want to keep the rules the way they are. It literally is that plain of an answer. But the Biden administration actually submitted these amendments, so they're not going to want to reject them. And that's where people power has to come into play. How many millions of Americans can we inform about this as fast as possible, so we let it be known that we don't want one person, running a world government, deciding to declare emergencies whenever the heck they please. We need to keep control of that. And so when people start talking about, how this is wrecking our Constitution, well, if we let it, if we sign on to an agreement that hands over power to a dictator, of course it will if we let it. But now is the time to stand up and say, no, we're not going to let that happen.
So everyone watching, you can click the link to James's Substack down below in my description. He links to a letter that he's pre-formatted for you to write to your congressman and alert them to what's going on. Make sure your congressman is in the know and can help represent you at the federal level. You said that you or your constituents heard back from Congressman McCall out of Texas. Is that right?
Yes, they got a letter, and I'll be publishing that pretty much right after we get off this, and I'll get it to you, and maybe you do your next show or something on that. It's really interesting because one of the things that they said in there was that these negotiations actually began during the Trump administration. So, a lot of people are, Biden. I'm no fan of any politician. The issue, though, is, did the representative actually read the final version? Because there were actual errors in the details of what was going on. And, with legal language, you can change one word. You can say, you must do something or you may do something. And it makes all of the difference in the world. And so 8 pages of amendments where you have to watch every word and you have to read between the lines. We've analyzed it all. If you go to the sites and just look for all the evidence is, the beauty of this is, I've actually presented all of the evidence. They're just government documents that we're shining light on, trying to explain, what they are. Don't take my word for it. Go read it for yourself. When your head starts hurting, take a break. But the issue is really very simple. Do we want to control our own destiny, on a country, state, county, local city level? Or do we want to just hand over absolute power to someone who would clearly be a dictator? And I go back to Roman times, where the definition of the person who was given enormous power to take care of things when there was an emergency, in Roman times, the name that was given to that person was a dictator. They would dictate orders. They would bark orders. They were a dictator. And you can't have dictatorship without emergency. That's the definition of the word. And so why would we want to give the power to just unilaterally declare an emergency to one basically unelected person in Geneva? It's just absolute insanity. But that's what our current administration is attempting to do.
Wow. So Michelle Bachmann has been speaking out about this, former congresswoman from Minnesota. She said that she actually heard from Pete Sessions, he's actually a congressman from Texas. He apparently, his constituents lit up his phone and email about this after she spoke out about it. And so he phones her up like, what's going on? He was in the dark about it.
Yeah.
So that just goes to show you, if you write your congressman, you're concerned about American sovereignty.
My phone's been lit up. I've given my phone number on just about every broadcast I've been on. It's 310-619-3055. Yes, I did just dox my own phone number. 310-619-3055. I have met the most wonderful people who have called because they're concerned. They want to get their facts straight. They have questions. If you text me first, that's wonderful. We can do that. If you're in some other country, because this is a worldwide thing, on WhatsApp and Signal and Telegram, put 1+ and put me in your contacts. But this is that important. I honestly think that this document could be looked at as the founding document of the reset, because it's just resetting, who's in charge. But I'm actually very, very optimistic, because they were trying to hide this, right? Kind of like Nancy Pelosi. Oh, you can read it after you vote for it, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Because they were trying to hide it, they didn't put this enormous propaganda campaign on it. So people don't really have any preconceived notion. And so when they look at it, they actually see how insane it is. And I've never seen people fired up like this for anything. Many years ago, there was something called the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It was a similar idea. It was a trade deal, though, and it would give sovereignty away from countries and people to corporations. And people power shut that thing down. People found out about it, and everybody made a big stink, and they backed off, right? And I have every faith in the world that can happen again in a much bigger way with this one.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, if you look at history, Hitler used the emergency powers article in Germany's constitution to seize ultimate control,
Yep.
and so we don't want, it's a bad idea to give one guy all the power.
Especially, I mean, if that one guy was a mixture of Jesus and Buddha and the saint of your choice and Krishna, even no, even if it was that spectacular of a human being, right, person, a saint, a god, whatever, I still would want to have my choice. I wouldn't want to be dictated, even with that benevolent, figurehead. We have different problems in different places of the world. They want a one size fits all. Everybody under one health is the phrase that they use. It just doesn't make any sense. We're all different people, and we should have different choices available to us.
Okay, real quick, we got some super chats. WHO is a racket, says Hand of Mold. Thank you, Hand of Mold, for the super chat. You said they're a racket communist tool to control people's lives, unelected, leftist funded nonsense. Stop the theft of freedom. A lot of people feel that way. And this one from Vids of Doug. Thanks for the super chat. Quote, got regarding from PA Senator Toomey can send screenshot. What are you talking about there? You got you're saying that you got an email back from Pennsylvania Senator Toomey? Awesome.
Send it to me at james.roguski@gmail.com. I'd love to publish that and see what he had to say. I hope he's on top of things. james.roguski@gmail.com, and we'll see what he had to say. I'd appreciate it.
Hey, send it to me too. Ivory@ivoryhecker.com. If you guys hear back from your congressman,
absolutely,
let us know, and we'll keep on top of it. All right. Anything else people should know, James, before we call it a day?
Just spread the word. Take this video and just everywhere. Put it everywhere. Don't keep it quiet. Don't hide it. Let everybody know.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for giving us a heads up about it. Let us know about any other developments. Okay.
You bet. Absolutely.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.